There was a time when therapy was not for us. Hell, the founders of this
Yeah.
profession, right, literally said that Black people did not have the physiological
Yeah.
makeup, the brain development to even have a mental health condition. We weren't smart enough and we didn't have problems.
Yeah.
That mental health conditions literally were for white landowners because they had real stress, they
Wow.
had real
Yeah.
issues. And then when they finally did recognize that we had mental health conditions, the first one that they diagnosed us with was something called drapetomania. And that was for enslaved persons who tried to escape enslavement. And they said,
Wow.
surely you must be crazy to want to leave this lifestyle. Oh, it gets worse. The cure for it, cut off a toe, toe by toe, until you get the life back in you, until you can conform. If you have somebody who has what we now know was depression, right? So for the longest time, this was not for us. But think about the stressors of just Black folks who were enslaved back
Listen.
then.
Listen.
Okay, forget post traumatic stress disorder. We were dealing with it actively.
Yeah.
Depression, anxiety, and we won't even talk about things like schizophrenia or bipolar
Yeah.
disorder. These things have been here since the beginning of time, but we haven't been diagnosed with them.
Yeah.
So the things that we were having to survive with no treatment, no care, and then we won't even get into the racism. You get
Yeah.
into the 60s with
Yeah.
like protest psychosis, where they literally were diagnosing Black men with paranoia,
Yeah.
paranoid schizophrenia for protesting for their civil rights,
Yeah.
and were lobotomizing us, were drugging us and institutionalizing
That
us.
was like
It's
that,
serious.
because that book, Medical Apartheid,
Oh, girl.
like it gives you it
I
just
see you. Come on. Come on, well studied. I love
listen.
this.
Harriet Washington, I think it's Harriet Washington
Come
who
on.
wrote that book, A Medical Apartheid. But it talks about that. I mean,
Yeah.
even Dr. Joy DeGruy talks about it in
Oh, yeah,
post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Absolutely.
Hyperly vigilant,
Yes.
all the time. We're
Yes.
always on edge. We're always in this like hyper vigilant
Yes.
state because of the amount of stress
Come
that has
on.
been we're carrying in our DNA.
So now think about that with no treatment. Think about then the actual histories that have been passed down to us orally, written. Think about us watching our grandparents,
Yeah.
great grandparents, our actual parents who have raised us. So we have traumatized individuals with mental health
Yeah.
conditions who are then
Yeah.
trying to parent,
Yeah.
right, when they weren't well parented,
Yeah.
who had to survive systems that are still trying to kill them. Think about what lives in our DNA, and then think about the civil unrest now that is being activated within
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
So then when they constantly think, oh, y'all are crazy. No, we're not crazy, right? When they say, well, we tried to tell you, right? Black folks tried to tell you. It is this intuitive knowing. And when we get into epigenetics and some of the other really consequential things that teach us what lives in us, the knowing to be hypervigilant, the
Yeah.
knowing to be aware
Yeah.
of your surroundings, the understanding of socio-political culture and how that heightens that hypervigilance, and the toll that that takes on our mental health, just as we try to parent, just as
Yeah.
we try to go to
Yeah.
work, just as we try to
Yeah.
love each other, just as we
Yeah.
try to show up in community for each other.
Yeah.
We are traumatized, hypervigilant people who need care probably more than anybody else. And then
Oof.
that is why our physical health data is showing us where our mental health is failing us.
Ooh, that is
Right?
good. I
That
want to
is
stand
it.
up and clap. Listen, that's a point.
Come on.
Okay.
I need us to make the
Yeah,
connection, because
it
we
is.
still won't go and relieve ourselves. We still won't cry out. We still don't even understand the power of crying. Hell, we got people that will not shed actual tears, right? Who refuse to
Doc.
cry. Like, the thing that kills me on my timeline is when people go, who's cutting onions in here?
Yeah.
And it took me a second to even recognize for the culture that they I was like, cry? So
Yeah.
you won't admit to crying?
Doc, I spoke at an event. This was 2 years ago. And a woman came up to me afterwards and she said, I haven't cried in 4 years.
Yes. Yes.
She said, this is the first time I've cried in 4 years.
Come on.
She was like, and the fact that you gave me that release, I literally was in, who ain't cried? I just cried last
So
week.
many. No, sis, because we take it as weakness.
Yeah.
right? And so many of us have heard, as a function of our survival,
Yeah.
don't let them see you cry,
Yeah.
right? To let them see you cry taught us culturally that they were affecting us.
Yeah.
So whether it was during segregation and don't let them see you cry while the schools are being integrated, don't let them see you cry while they're whipping your husband or selling your children.
Yeah.
Don't let them see you cry as
Yeah.
you are birthing
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
that they realize that you
Yeah.
have value for,
Yeah.
right? Whether it's
Yeah.
an actual life or something that you're creating. We have been taught that that is a symbol of your vulnerability, and you don't give anybody that. Hell, we won't even cry with our partners. We won't
Yeah.
even cry with ourselves
Yeah.
to acknowledge how much we care about things, right?
Yeah.
But really, if you ever had the opportunity to take even a single tear and put it under a microscope, you could see the stress hormones that are in there. You could see, oh, yes, crying is your body's way of naturally relieving itself. When you cry, your muscles constrict, you
Yeah.
push oxygen in and
Yeah.
out of your body. There's a whole process. It's meant to be a part of natural healing that you don't have to reach for anything in order to make yourself feel better. And we've removed even that coping strategy from ourselves,
Yeah.
further driving up blood pressure, further driving up lack of oxygen to really facilitate what needs to happen in our organs. We are dying because we will not access our full range of healing. And these are ancestral ways of healing. And we've
Yeah.
just lost all of
Yeah.
it by
Yeah.
design.
Yeah.
By design.
That is so good.
Yeah.
This is like my favorite conversation. You know, you say we've lost this, right?
Yes.
So then what are the steps that we can take to start to regain this so that we can really start to love each other and create these healthy relationships
Yeah.
and these healthy home environments?
Yeah, well, it really gets into individual healing. You can only love to the depths that you really love yourself.
Yeah.
Really and truly, because there are places and spaces that we can't go to. And a lot of people hate to hear that. I recently had a conversation about the importance of mothers being happy and the joy of that and the necessity of that. And I had a ton of women who were like, oh, great, just put one more thing on mothers, because now if I'm not happy, then now that affects my children. Wow, just thanks a lot. And it was like, well, think about what you're saying. 86% of women are the primary caregiver. So how can you, from a depressed state, raise a happy child and think that your child won't be affected? How can the father who is in the home and the quality of your relationship not impact how you then show up with the children that you're raising? And I had men go, what do you mean we're not the number one thing? This is ridiculous. I don't want to hear about the happiness of women. And we go, well, maybe that's part of the problem. Maybe we're so disconnected, we don't see our interconnectedness. We don't see how we're constantly not just brushing up against each other, but crashing against each other, constantly wounding each other. But we also don't recognize that we are the answer to each other's healing, right? If I can heal myself, if I can stop and take stock of what my wounds are, if I can get in front of somebody that can help me heal, how I show up in my healed space, in my healing space, I can make space for your healing too. I can have empathy for you. I can have grace for you. I can model that for you. I can create that environment for you. And all of a sudden, then we're creating something different in our home. And when each of us go out, that is what we are emitting. That's what we're modeling. That's what we're creating. And that is what happens in community, right? We get sick in community, but we can also heal in community. So it's like, how do we get very intentional about our wellness? Because that's the one thing that they never wanted us to have. It was, what's the bare minimum I got to give you in order to keep you alive so you will produce for me? And that's still where we are even today in this capitalistic society. It's how many breadcrumbs do I have to give you to keep you coming back here in order to just produce? And that's why even when we look at corporate wellness, right, the absenteeism, the lack of productivity, they don't even recognize that if you were to invest in the wellness of your employees, the return on investment is roughly $4 for every dollar spent.
Wow.
Right. And so we have to look at how all of this is interconnected. Mental wellness is at the heart of everything. It's at the heart of our very humanity. It's at the heart of the way that we're even engaging in the world. So until we reconnect and plug back into that for self, we're never going to be okay. We're never going to be okay.